Good evening. Welcome to the Vancouver Kimberlite Cluster Seminar. Thank you for tuning in virtually from all over the world. I'm going to get my screen shared. I would like to introduce, I think we have someone mute. Okay. I would like to introduce myself. I am Katherine Landoni, a Master's of Science student at the University of British Columbia, studying under Kelly Russell, and I am the VKC host for this year. I have here with me virtually Barbara Scott-Smith, an adjunct professor at UBC, as the convener for the 2021 VKC series, while Maya Kopylova is on sabbatical. VKC is a series of seminars for diamond geology and related topics. Our goal is to bring academics and industry professionals together. I want to acknowledge SRK Consulting for being a longstanding VKC sponsor. Thank you. I know that we are pretty well versed at this point in Zoom etiquette, but I just want to share a few housekeeping notes before we get started. Please keep your microphones and cameras off during the presentation for the quality of streaming. And I will be policing this. If someone isn't muted, I will mute them. The presentation will be about 50 minutes, so please keep your questions for the end, and I will help facilitate the questions and answer period at that time. I'm delighted to welcome not only one, but two speakers from Lipari Mining tonight, who are speaking from Brazil, 110,000 kilometers southeast of Vancouver, where it's actually 10 p.m. local time. So I'll start with Ken Johnson, who is a Canadian graduating from the University of Windsor. He is also the past director and frequent speaker at PDAC. Ken has 30 years of experience in diamond exploration, development, production, and project finance, working on projects in Canada and Africa, which included the discovery and development of the Mbala alluvial diamond mine in Central African Republic. Ken moved to Brazil in 2010 and as the CEO of Valdiem Resources. He was involved with the development of alluvial diamond mines in the states of Minas Gerais and Mato Grosso, and kimberlite exploration in joint venture with Rio Tinto in the Pimenta Bueno Diamond District of Rondônia. Ken is currently the founder, CEO, president, and director of Lipari Mining, spearheading the development of the Brauna Diamond Mine, which we are going to hear about today. Alongside Ken, we have Paulo Donati Filho. Paulo is a Brazilian with a PhD from the University of Campinas, where he is now a collaborating researcher. His interests and publications range from crustal evolution, kimberlite petrology, to economic diamond geology. Paulo has 15 years of experience in kimberlites and diamond exploration, including in Minas Gerais state, but is now the geology and exploration manager of Lipari, currently working on the Greenfields Diamond Exploration Project in the Jayabaras Kimberlite Project in Para State, as well as the development of the Brauna Diamond Mine. So in addition to geology, I've also heard that Paulo is quite a talented jazz musician and loves rebuilding classic cars in his spare time. So welcome, Ken and Paulo. The floor is now yours.
Well, thank you very much, Katherine, for that introduction.
Thank you, Katherine.
I don't know who put that mention in there about Paulo and his music. I think Certain Asia music is probably his love, I think. Ultimately.
No, definitely not.
But anyway,
Okay,
thank you, Katherine. Thank you, Barbara, for inviting us to present tonight. It's quite a good group, some very famous names in terms of diamond exploration I see here. So it's quite an audience to present to, so we appreciate this. Paulo, you're going to share the screen?
Yes, right now. Oh, host disabled participant screen sharing.
I will fix that. All right, you should be good to go now.
Okay, good. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, you can move to the first slide there, Paul.
Yeah. Can you see? Can you guys see it?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just go on to the second slide. Paulo and I are going to do a tag team match here today in this presentation. I'll introduce our mine, also talk a little bit about the history of diamonds in Brazil. Brazil's had a long history of diamond production, almost all from alluvial deposits, but there's a huge potential there for economic kimberlites. And really what's required is just basic exploration. We'll touch on the geological setting of the kimberlites, and Paulo will delve into the geology of our Brauna kimberlites and what we're doing there in the mine. So next slide, please. So diamonds in Brazil. Next slide. Brazil has a long history of diamond production. Diamonds were first discovered in 1714 in Minas Gerais state along the Jequitinhonha River. These were large-scale manual productions that relied on really slave labor to produce the diamonds. And the diamond fields grew, production grew, and by 1739, the Portuguese crown took control of the areas, restricted entrance, assessed a huge tax on these family-run mining operations who required to use slave labor to produce the diamonds. And what's interesting is that the slaves could win their freedom by finding a large diamond in excess of 17 carats. But in that area, that would be, I think, almost impossible. So it would have been quite a feat for a slave to win his freedom. So it certainly would have been difficult work working along that river producing those diamonds. In 1763, these diamond rushes, these big rushes of miners into the areas, forced the transfer of Brazil's capital from Salvador, where I am right now, down to Rio de Janeiro, and the development of the Estrada Real, or the rural road between Diamantina and Rio de Janeiro, which provided transport of diamonds and gold down to Rio de Janeiro and then onward to Portugal. And if you do have an opportunity to visit Lisbon, some of the museums there, there's no shortage of Brazilian diamonds and a lot of the crowns and royal jewelry that's on display there in those museums. So Brazil was the main source of the world's diamond production for over 150 years until the rich discoveries in the Kimberley area in South Africa. Next slide. So Brazil's had a long history of diamond production, almost all of it from alluvial production. And you can see that there's big peaks and big valleys here in terms of the production. You know, back in the 1700s, along the Jequitinhonha River in Minas Gerais was the largest producer. Production obviously dropped off over time. And then you had subsequent diamond rushes in areas like Mato Grosso, the Juína diamond field, and other areas where you had these big peaks. Some of these deep valleys, like you see in the late 1990s, are likely due more to the lack of production reporting than the lack of production, actually, out of those diamond fields. I think you probably, in real terms, the production curve's a little smoother than it's shown on this graph, and this comes from government production reports. The first kimberlite production started from our mine, the Brauna mine, in 2016. And hopefully, with further exploration and more discoveries, we can grow this production from a primary source. Next slide. So Brazil's got 23 different diamond provinces in the country, and they're very widespread. And there's a lot of kimberlite potential here in the country. There's been over 1,300 kimberlites discovered since 1966, and the majority of these kimberlites are found proximal to, close to, alluvial diamond producing areas. Exploration has indicated approximately 100 kimberlites are diamond bearing, but I think that number actually is quite low. I think there's more kimberlites that are potentially diamond bearing. And what's lacking is proper sampling. There has been a paucity of bulk sampling of these kimberlites. There've been a lot of discoveries, but no sampling in terms of bulk sampling, microdiamond sampling to test the economic potential of these diamonds. 90% of the known kimberlites are off craton, so they don't conform to Clifford's rule, whereby diamondiferous kimberlites occur in geological regions that have been tectonically stable. So you've got to be on craton supposedly to have a diamondiferous kimberlite. We've got examples here in Brazil, like the Canastra kimberlite in Minas Gerais, which is off craton, which indicates that either you've got buried cratons in the area or the craton margins are not well mapped at this point. So there is potential here in some of these areas that are perceived to be off craton. They actually could be on craton. Next slide. So talking about our Brauna mine, it's the first diamond mine. It's been developed on a kimberlite deposit. It's located about 350 kilometers to the northwest of Salvador, the state of Bahia. It was discovered in 1993 by De Beers as a result of ground follow-up of airborne magnetic anomalies and indicator mineral sampling. And actually, we've got a couple of people that are listening to the talk tonight that were involved in that discovery. Homero was working at De Beers, running De Beers when they made this discovery, and José Ricardo Pisani was one of the geologists working for De Beers and made the discovery of the Brauna kimberlites there on our property. Our mine started commercial production in July 2016. We developed the mine at a capital cost of $65 million. And as of the end of last year, we've produced 818,000 carats of diamonds and sold over $150 million worth of diamond sales. So as I mentioned, our mine is located in Bahia, 350 kilometers from the capital city of Salvador. It's well located. We've got paved roads, electrical service right to the property. So it's an easy area to explore and develop. It's an arid area, so there's not a lot of water, which has forced us to develop what I think is a state-of-the-art water recovery circuit. We don't have a tailings pond on our mine. We recover 95% of our water, and I think we only have makeup water from the river that represents about 15% of our total water consumption at the processing plant. Next slide. So the geological setting, we've got 23 kimberlite occurrences on the property, and the largest is Brauna 3, where the mine is located right now. It's a kimberlite pipe that's about 2 hectares in size. These kimberlites occur along a northwest trending structural lineament that is both small pipes and dike systems and blows along these dike systems. And Paulo will talk about the geology of the area in more detail later in this presentation. In terms of mineral resources, we have an open pit resource of around 370,000 carats. We're going to be mining down to a depth below surface of 260 meters. Right now, the pit is about 150 meters in depth, so we're getting quite deep right now. And we've defined the kimberlites down to a depth of around 550 meters below surface through drilling. The two lobes, you've got what we call the north lobe and south lobe. They are connected by a dike system between, so you've got continuous kimberlite between the south and north lobes. Next slide. So in terms of our operation, it's a 12,000 ton per day mining operation. We own our own mining fleet. We have our own maintenance crew, and we use rigid frame trucks, off-road trucks to haul our ore to the plant. We mine about 25 to 3,000 tons of ore a day, and the depth, the pit currently is 185 meters below surface. Ultimate pit depth will be 260 meters. Next slide. In terms of the plant, our plant has a processing capacity around 2,500 tons per day. We have a large diamond circuit that we installed in 2018 to recover the larger stones between minus 45 millimeter and plus 25 millimeter. We recovered diamonds up to, I think the largest was 860 carats, was it, Paulo?
Yes, yes.
It was unfortunately abort, but we get some very large stones at our Browna mine. We've got a dense media circuit that's 150 tons per hour, and it feeds into 6 flow sort machines to recover the diamonds in a secure setting. As I mentioned earlier, we've got a state-of-the-art water circuit that allows us to recover about 95% of our processed water. So there's no tailings pond, which is important in this area. And our maintenance team and house maintenance team has kept the plant running at an excellent availability. We average over 95% availability on our processing plant. So in terms of our production, we had a good start. We were producing over 200,000 carats in 2017-18. Production dropped in 2019 and further in 2020, and dropped mainly for 2 reasons. One is that we started falling behind on our stripping in 2018 and more so in 2019. We didn't have very good availability on our mining fleet. Our mining fleet was probably undersized for the amount of stripping that we had to do. So we ended up with quite a deficit in terms of waste stripping, which created some bottlenecks in terms of accessing good ore and forced us to process lower grade ore and also ore from a low grade stockpile. So that cut into our production and really hurt us in 2019 and going into 2020. 2020 was impacted both by this backlog of stripping, but also by the pandemic. And we're still feeling that now a little bit here in Brazil because of the pandemic. It's difficult to get spare parts for your equipment. So it's more difficult to keep your fleet operating. So we've felt the impact of that pandemic in that sense as well. But going into this year, this first quarter of 2021 has been excellent, where production has come right back up, and we're doing quite well. We finally reduced that waste stripping deficit that we had, and we've got the mine back with good operating room and good access to ore, and our grades come right back up. And so far we've had a very good year in 2021. Here's a shot of some of the larger diamonds that we've recovered. We get about 4 or 5% of our production are stones that are greater than 10.8 carats, and about 35% of those special stones, those 10.8 carat stones, are gem quality like this. The remainder are bort quality, but still it's a relatively high and coarse diamond population. Most of our value comes from stones in excess of 3 carats. About 75% of our value comes from stones larger than 3 carats in size. Next slide. We've been working with SRK, looking at transitioning the mine to an underground operation at the end of the open pit, which will be towards the end of 2022. This program has been delayed a little bit by the pandemic, and with the decline in diamond prices that we saw last year, when prices dropped, from 30–40%, it certainly impacts the potential economics of an underground operation like this. But now that diamond prices are starting to come back, we're starting to look again at advancing this engineering and advancing this work to transition the mine from an open pit operation to an underground operation once the open pit is finished. And we're also looking at continuing our exploration program in the area. We've applied for a permit to allow us to start a small open pit on the Browna 7 kimberlite, which lies just 500 meters from a processing plant. And we hope to get started on that work by about the 4th quarter of this year, is assuming we get the environmental permit in place. Next slide. And now, Paulo, I'll pass it on to you and present with the geo.
Thanks. Okay, I would like to present to you guys the geological settings of Brazil's kimberlite first. Just a general overview. I'm going to try to be more simplistic because I have lots of slides to show, and then we can discuss later after the presentation some doubts that maybe will occur. So first, I will start with the tectonic setting of the Brazilian Shield. Here, this figure illustrates the Archean cratons in pink, here, light pink. We have not lots of exposition, but mainly in the north part of Brazil and east part of Brazil, northeast part of Brazil. Also, the Neoproterozoic belts represented by this light blue color. Here's the Brasilia belt, Araçuaí belt, Sergipano belt, and others, and also the Cenozoic basins covering all the older rocks. So here I did plot the craton limits to show that the Brazilian Shield is composed by the Amazon craton, São Luís craton, São Francisco craton, Paranapanema craton, and Luiz Alves craton here. And I also plotted I did plot the main structures, which is mainly controlled by this northwest, northeast system, right? And minor, more or less, north-south lineaments. Here, as Ken also just presented, we have the diamond provinces in Brazil, more or less 23, which includes the alluvial diamonds and some closed kimberlites, diamondiferous kimberlites. Note that the majority of the diamonds in Brazil came from this area here, right? And here's the kimberlite occurrence in Brazil, more than 1,300 kimberlites. The majority is concentrated in Minas Gerais and Goiás state here. And note that we have this important lineament, northwest lineament, that the majority of the kimberlites occurs in Brazil. Interestingly, in terms of although diamond-rich sediments of Phanerozoic and Precambrian age have been exploited in Brazil since the 18th and 19th century, as Ken mentioned, only Brauna kimberlite became a diamond producer from primary source, right? Many studies have focused on the Mesozoic kimberlites in Brazil that was associated with the opening of the South Atlantic Ocean along this, principally along this 2,000 kilometers corridor here. In terms of age, then we have an increase of age to the northwest, in this case of this corridor, and a decrease of ages to the southeast, right? Like Rondônia state here present kimberlites with 298 million years, 232, Mato Grosso 242, 122, 120, 93, 80 million years. Goiás with kimberlites about 99, 88, 87 million years. In Minas Gerais vary from 77 to 98 million years. Also Jaibaras kimberlite with 245, Brauna with 642 million years. And the oldest one, Salvador 1 kimberlite with 1.1 billion years. It's a rubidium age dating in phlogopite. As we know, this methodology for Precambrian rocks has some problems, but this what we have. Also, Salvador 1 kimberlite is a talc schist right now. It's a meta kimberlite. And yes, that's it. So here's the position of Brauna kimberlite field that I mentioned, and here's a diagram to show the age variation that we have at least published in Brazil. So the majority of the kimberlites are Mesozoic, and we have these peaks here: Brauna kimberlite and Salvador here with 1.1. So the majority is below 100 million years. So the oldest is Salvador. The youngest kimberlite is 69.7 million years, almost 70 million years. Santa Fe 1, it's a small dike. Also, in terms of comparison, I did this diagram to show the surface area exposition. We have huge kimberlites like Monte Carmelo with 187 hectare. And the average size of at least the mapped kimberlites, published mapped kimberlites, we are talking about almost 500 kimberlites. It's is 6.6 hectare. The smallest kimberlite is a small dike, 0.01 hectare. Limpeza 36, 20, Sucesso 20, Nicó 1 and 2. And Brauna kimberlite with 2 hectares. It's not the biggest one, but it's representative. So the small kimberlites are also interesting in the point of view of the economics, the economic side. So this is an exercise I did plotting together the diamond, the kimberlite and lamproite deposits in the world. I took the information, the published information, and did draw the shapes for comparison. Each color represents a different country. In red, Canada. Here, South Africa, Russia, Botswana, Tanzania, Australia, Angola, Brazil, and Brazilian kimberlites, to show the comparison, to compare the surface area, for example, of Monte Carmelo is a potential kimberlite with other kimberlites in the world. So we have one of the largest target to explore, and also here the Brauna kimberlite, which is our mine. So I would like to introduce the Brauna field, the information we've collected since 2005, 2006. So Brauna field is located in the northeast São Francisco Craton. São Francisco Craton is composed by these main 3 Archean blocks: Gavião, Serrinha, and Jequié block. Separated by this origin, the Paleoproterozoic origin, Itabuna, Salvador, Curaçá. The Brauna kimberlites occurs including this unit here, Serrinha block. So this is a zoom of the Serrinha block configuration. Here we have the Archean basement, the Santa Luz basement, and here the supracrustal rock. Represented by this, it's a greenstone, Paleoproterozoic greenstone belt, named Rio Itapicuru greenstone belt, composed by dacites, andesites, basalts, and syntectonic granites. So Brauna kimberlite occurs including only this mega batholite named Nordestina granodiorite. It's a TTG. So here's a zoom of the Brauna field. Brauna field is composed by 23 bodies, kimberlite bodies, 3 pipes, Brauna 3, 7, and 4, and 21 dikes, more or less connected, following this North 40W trend. And in terms of whole rock geochemistry, this is the Smith diagrams, old diagrams, but very good diagrams for comparison. Using trace elements and major elements, just to show that Brauna kimberlites do not fit in the classical definition for kimberlites, South African kimberlites. In orange, we have the orangeites, in blue, the group 1 kimberlites, and in this dotted area here, the transitional South African kimberlites. So we have a tendency of Brauna, the black dots, a geochemical tendency in between orangeites and transitional kimberlites. All these diagrams here. In terms of stable isotope, we have a negative epsilon neodymium composition for the Brauna kimberlites. Brauna kimberlites are here, and this black square here. So also showing that we have a transition between transitional kimberlites to olivine lamproites, right? I did plot together the Brazilian kimberlite perovskites and kimberlites together in order to compare with the other kimberlites in Brazil. Also guaniamo, which is anomalous, is an anomalous kimberlite. Archangels, transitional kimberlite as well from Russia. So we more or less have a trend to these anomalous to transitional kimberlite, principally in terms of the epsilon neodymium data. Here's another interesting diagram showing the lanthanum niobium ratio, revealing that Brauna kimberlite source, magma source, should be related to a transition from the the top of the asthenosphere and base of the subcontinental lithospheric mantle. These ratios between 0.7 to 1.5 is a asthenospheric mantle derived magmas and also with a strong heterogeneous source, maybe involving metasomatic fluids and other material, other contaminants. So we maybe have this interaction between asthenospheric and lithospheric mantle materials, right? So also I did plot together the results from the fertile phlogopite bearing peridotites from North China Craton, which was interpreted as a product of variable degrees of metasomatism, including infiltration in fluid sources from deeply subducted suprarock rocks, just to implement the idea that we can also have at that time something that subducted below the craton and contaminated the mantle source of the Brauna kimberlite. Regarding the geochronology, I did date Brauna using perovskites, uranium-leading perovskites, by using the TIMS, so thermal ionization mass spectrometer at University of Alberta with Professor Larry Heeman. I did try the Brauna 3 first, but we did not have enough perovskites for dating. So the other sample I had on hand was Brauna 7, which is close to Brauna 3, so they should be the same age. And we've got a very good age between revealing a 642 million years for Brauna field, right? The thorium uranium ratio is too low for Brauna perovskite, so we need lots of grains for age dating using TIMS. So this include the Brauna kimberlite as one of the oldest Neoproterozoic kimberlites in the world. So I did plot together all the published data from Neoproterozoic kimberlites from Greenland, South America, Brauna and guaniamo in Venezuela, some Australian kimberlites, South Africa kimberlites, Canadian kimberlites, USA kimberlites, and Finland. So Brauna is here, one of the oldest ones. So back at that time, 642 Neoproterozoic, we are talking about the cryogenium, where the theories say that the Earth was almost covered by ice, and the poles, the ice poles, almost touched the equator line, and we had few parts of the ocean at surface, liquid surface, and the majority of the continent was covered by ice. So here's a representation, a figure representing the cryogenium, which was the time that Brauna and these others kimberlites intruded in the planet, in the crust. And this is the representation of the agglutination of the Rodinia from Lee et al. 2008. At that time, we only had this supercontinent Rodinia and small intraoceanic volcanoes, and the rest was sea. Here's the beginning of the breakup of Rodinia at 900 million years. In red here we have the active margins. Also this configuration was the Rodinia for agglutination of the cratons, which is composed by São Francisco Congo Craton, Rio de la Plata Craton, Laurentia, Amazon Craton, Baltica, West Africa, Great India, South China, Australia, North China, Siberia, etc. So going further to 630 million years, which is more or less the age of the Brauna kimberlites. Here we can see the Great India and South China already break it apart from Australian Craton. And here we started to have a breakup of this São Francisco Congo Craton, West African and Amazon Craton. So I did plot as an exercise more or less the position of the Neoproterozoic kimberlite, and then we came up with this situation here, principally this situation here. Now here's the Brauna kimberlite, Oaks kimberlite in Africa, and Guanyamu kimberlite in the Amazon Craton, corroborating with the idea that the kimberlites are related to the breakup of supercontinents. So another important information that we've got is I did a study about the heritage zircons from Brauna kimberlite. I took like 150 kilograms of the kimberlites available, not only the Brauna 3, and did analyze. I processed and did analyze more than 100 grains zircon grains. At Brauna, the zircons are all xenocrys, and this happened. It's common happening in all kimberlites, and it's rare to see a phenocryst, zircon phenocryst in kimberlite. More when do occur is a megacryst related to metasomatism, etc. So the range of ages is about 2.1 billion years to 2.2 billion years, which is exactly the same what we get at the Rio Itapicuru Greenstone Belt. Those are the published ages for Rio Itapicuru Greenstone Belt. We had all this sampling universe here in the Brauna kimberlite. So the Brauna kimberlite, in fact, cross-cut all the Greenstone Belt units, but we did not get any Archean zircon. So this raises some questions. Now, why? Maybe we have two options. Then maybe this the fissure zone is too deep, and for some reason at the bottom of the craton we have more space or more openings that did not allow the kimberlite to sampling the basement, or the basement was eroded. So this is still under debate, but it's good information. Doing a cross section in the São Francisco, in the Rio Itapicuru Greenstone Belt and the Brauna field, we have this tectonical model that I presented in 2013, simplifying all the information in the past two. So we have the formation of the Brauna magma in between the subcontinental lithospheric mantle and the top of the asthenosphere, collecting the diamonds, the xenocrysts, and then during the kimberlite ascent, the kimberlite incorporated asthenospheric mantle and subcontinental lithospheric mantle. We have this in the Brauna kimberlite, but for some reason we don't have this Archean basement here, and the kimberlite only collected the greenstone belt, and of course the main host rock, which is the nordestina granodiorite. In terms of facies, kimberlite facies classification, we have basically two facies, coherent and volcanoclastic varieties. The coherent is divided by three main subfacies, CK1, CK2, CK3. CK1 is massive, locally unhomogeneous ground mass in terms of size and proportion of phlogopite and clinopyroxene. Phlogopite microcrystal are common, comprising olivine and phlogopite-rich ground mass, matrix supported, as you can see here, including pseudomagma class like this. It's hard to see here in the photo, but under microscope is much more clear. The ground mass mineralogy is composed by phlogopite, clinopyroxene, carbonate, serpentine, perovskite, opaques, and apatite. CK2. CK2 is the coherent CK2, massive with locally homogeneous ground mass in terms of size and relatively proportions of minerals, mainly phlogopite and clinopyroxene, as you can see here. The phlogopite is much more, coarse, medium to coarse and coarse grained. Phenocrysts are rare. The olivine abundance varies from 10 to 40. Ground mass mineralogy is restricted to phlogopite, clinopyroxene, carbonate, serpentine, perovskite, plus minus apatite, plus minus spinel, and plus minus amphibole. So this amphibole should be xenocryst, I think. Yes, and also the perovskite is typically altered, turbid brown, and subhedral. Sometimes we have some star-shaped perovskite, but they are generally absent or rare. Garnet xenocrysts are caliphitized in most of the samples, like this one here. CK3 is our most primitive variety. Let's say the most magmatic ones. Is massive and homogeneous, comprising olivine in a crystalline ground mass, as you can see here. Yeah. Modal abundance of olivine is about 50 to 55%. Olivine macrocrys typically range to fine to coarse grained. Also, we have ground mass mineralogy varying principally regarding the serpentine, perovskite, and apatite compositions. The olivine macrocrys sometimes presents some preserved core, rounded shapes, sometimes broken shapes. And the phlogopites are very pleochroic as well. So now jumping to the volcanoclastic units. So here we have the VK1. It's massive with magma classic texture and inhomogeneous olivine distribution. So we have the cryptocrystalline magma class here, and very well crystalline magma class here. Yeah. You can see the border here. The border is composed mainly by carbonate and the interclass composed mainly carbonates and serpentine and CPX. Many lights occur, but it's rare. Perovskite range in size to coarse 0.04 to 0.50 millimeters, and includes some euhedral star-shaped crystals, like this one here. Yeah, it's like a ninja star, right? Garnet's common is very caliphitized as well. VK2. VK2 is massive, indistinctly magma classed, inhomogeneous olivine distribution. But the difference is basically on the overprinting with the metasomatism. So sometimes we have a very well crystalline ground mass of the classes, and sometimes totally altered by metasomatism. And garnet is very common in this unit, and also completely cliffitized. And the last one is the volcanoclastic kimberlite dike. We did find a dike that cross-cut the Brauna 3 south and north lobes. It's massive with magma classic texture in non-homogeneous olivine distribution. We have this homogeneous interclast between the class. Sometimes the classes are cryptocrystalline and sometimes crystalline, and the interclasses are composed by serpentine, carbonate, very fine grained phlogopite, and opaques that we cannot recognize. Perovskite is in general coarse grained, euhedral shape. Also, sometimes we have the star shape perovskite, and garnet is common and sometimes very, very fresh and broken. So some photos of our drill cores to illustrate the different phases. I did include here some very different phases of the kimberlite. Here's the CK1, VK1X. The X is the amount of xenolith content plus more than 15% in the unit. CK2X as well. This is the phenitized granodiorite. The granodiorite is white and become red, green to red colored. And the CK3, as you can see by the color, we have different compositions and mineralogy, more olivine here, more carbonate and serpentine in the matrix here, more phlogopite in the matrix, in this unit here, CK2. It's very clear. So after 8 drilling programs that we performed since 2005, we were able to build a very good model, geological model for the Brauna 3 kimberlite. The total drilling program is about almost 25 kilometers of drill holes. So this means that the Brauna 3 kimberlite is the most drilled kimberlite in Brazil. Drip drill holes goes up to 560 meters. So we did project the kimberlite to 560 meters below surface. Brauna 3 is interpreted as root zone kimberlite transition to the base of the diatreme. And it's a 3-lobate pipe. We have the south lobe, central lobe, and north lobe. The central lobe is more or less a connection between the south and north lobes. It's much more a blow-like or a dike system-like than a pipe. And the south lobe is interpreted to be has to be the main conduct, magma conduct for the Brauna field. Right. This is the a plan section of the model showing the area exposition of the superficial area exposition of the kimberlite. So we're talking about 2 hectares. So based on the phase descriptions, we divide the kimberlite in mainly 4 units. The first one is a VK volcanoclastic dike, which cross-cut the south, central, and north lobes. S1 unit, which is all VKs together. S2, which is all the CKs joined together. And the S3 unit in green, which is composed by the S1 high diluted or presenting more than 15% of xenoliths, and S2 with more than 15% of xenoliths. So they are more, it's a combination of S1 and S2 units in the pipe. And the south and central, and the north and central lobes we treated separated from the south lobe. So this to show this back on 2006. This is the trench wall, the exploration trench wall, where we can see the mega blocks of granodiorite, macro blocks, and micro blocks of granodiorite. So this is what we are calling the S unit, but it's a saprolite, right? So just to illustrate the dilution or the xenolith content in the kimberlite. So that's it. This I want to present to you guys, and I hope to the audience understand what I would like to pass in terms of information. There's a lot of information to discuss, so I will give the final thoughts on the presentation. So Brauna kimberlite mine is the first diamond mine in South America developed on a kimberlite deposit. Brauna has produced 818,000 carats of diamonds, generating gross sales over $150 million. More than 1,300 kimberlites discovered in Brazil, and majority are proximal to alluvial diamond production. So it's an excellent opportunity and potential to develop other mines. Exploration scientific study of Brauna 3 kimberlite has led to a better understanding of the mantle under the South American shield. Brauna 3 kimberlite is one of the rarest Neoproterozoic diamond source that is being explored, mined in the world. Also, Brauna kimberlites do not fit in the classical subdivision of the kimberlites and orangites, formerly group 2 kimberlites. Their geochemical and isotopic signature with negative initial epsilon neodymium, as I said, and variable enriched strontium-strontium ratios suggest that Brauna kimberlite magmas were derived from a mantle source region that was strongly metasomatized, and this we can see in the rocks prior to the kimberlite magmatism at 642 million years. Incompatible trace elements distribution suggests that Brauna kimberlite magmas originate from the metasomatized basin of the San Francisco Craton. The metasomatism is under debate still, if we have some external influence of subduction or for some reason a recycling of the base of the lithosphere, we don't know, and with only minor input from the convecting upper mantle. So minor input of the deep source. And this may suggest that Brauna kimberlites were formed from enriched supercatonic mantle lithosphere during late Neoproterozoic extensional tectonics related to the breakup of the supercontinent Rodinia. And that's it. Questions, and for more information, visit the Lipari website, www.lipari.com.br. and in my two main publications at Chemical Geology and Journal of South American Earth Science. Thank you very much.
Fabulous, thank you. Now we can proceed to the questions and answer part of the seminar. If any of you would like to unmute yourselves, and if you feel comfortable to turn your camera on and ask a question, we would love that. But if you aren't comfortable, feel free to put a question in the chat, and I can ask that as well. All right.
I've got a question. When you measure your dilution, you're mainly looking at macro dilution. Do you have an idea of what the micro dilution is in both your coherent and your fragmental rocks?
In terms of modal distribution, the content?
Well, yeah, I'm just wondering how much, yeah.
The macro is less representative than the micro is less representative than the macro. We have 80%, 80 to 90% of macro. Macro, I mean more than 1 centimeter. Yeah? Fragments.
Yes.
It's rare to see micro fragments, for example, at thin sections. Yeah? We saw it together when I was at SRK doing the petrography. We saw some, but it's very rare. And then when we log the cores, sometimes it's impossible to distinguish between, because the majority of these small fragments are totally serpentinized. Sometimes we cannot distinguish between, for example, olivine pseudomorphs and serpentinized small fragments of the granodiorite.
Yeah,
So
I think that's a problem that you're not the only one that has. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm just asking because when you see, that much phlogopite and clinopyroxene, I wonder how much of that is just interaction or digestion of your country rock or created from. But I wanted to say it's a very interesting talk, a great mix of very scientific, technical, academic information and the practical. So I've really enjoyed the talk. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Maya has a question, I think.
Yeah. Thank you for an interesting talk. And if I may ask 2 questions. You said that out of the 1,300 individual kimberlite intrusions, some of them may be related rocks. So can you tell us a little bit more about what those kimberlites would be transitioning to? Is it elenioites or lamproites? So in what sense they're related? And the second question, can you tell us a little bit about your diamonds, whatever you can tell, maybe even prices or morphology or colors, whatever.
In Minas Gerais, in that corridor I mentioned, we did also find other ultramafic, ultrapotassic rocks, such as ugandites, camafugites, some alnoites related, and maybe lamproites. Lamproites is not very well described in our kimberlite literature in Brazil. So, as in the past, the Beers discovered the kimberlites, and the majority of the kimberlites in Brazil is very, very altered. So maybe that we have a chance to have a misinterpretation about the kimberlite mineralogy. So I believe that some of these 1,300 kimberlites are related to other ultramafic rocks. But the weather in Brazil is huge, so it's a tough work to identify these rocks in the field without drilling. So Brauna is very well studied because of the access. We had a very good access of fresh rock, so we can better interpret the information. But in fact, that what is missing in Brazil is more exploration, more drilling, and more access to fresh rocks to better understand this corridor and the rocks that occurs in this in the other part of Brazil. So for sure we have ugandites, camafugites, and lamprophyres, the related rocks in the middle of these clusters.
What was the second question?
The second question was about diamonds. Any information you can give us about your diamonds?
Well, in terms of the prices, the price range. Yeah, historically, I think our average is about $190 a carat. But you know, we've had sales up to $250 a carat, and probably as low as $170 during the tough times like last year. So, but really the value, our average unit value varies depending on the quality of the larger stones. As I mentioned, the majority of our value comes from stones in excess of 3 carats, probably 75% of our value. So, you know, if we start getting a lot of stones that have really nice models and you know, we don't have a lot of breakage, which is a real issue for us right now, you know, then we obviously get a higher diamond value. One of the things we're struggling with right now is diamond breakage. You know, the kimberlite is quite hard, and it as we go deeper in the kimberlite, it seems to be getting harder. So I think we have a lot of breakage as the diamonds are being liberated from the rock, and that's a tough thing for us to fix. You know, we put in this large diamond circuit, you know, this XRT unit, which has helped. But certainly, if we, you know, the breakage depends on you know, our rate of feed to the plant. If we try to push production too much through the crushers, you get a lot of fines in the crushers. You increase your breakage, and our diamond value goes down. So while our grade might go up because we're putting more material, more kimberlite through the plant, our revenue drops. So we've got to find this balance, which is difficult sometimes.
And Ken, just to come in there, presumably those white stones are all type 2s, are they?
Yeah, I think so. We've never really done any study on that, John. So, but yeah, they're very, very clear, very white, nice looking stones, good models.
Mm. Yeah, but steady, those are the ones you want, and you should be definitely looking at your breakage problem, which I'm sure you are.
We've tried, and we're trying everything, John. You know, you know, and had experts over from South Africa to try to help us fix it. But it's a difficult thing to get your you know, to determine, you know, where you're breaking the diamonds and why. You know, and I think we've come to the point where we understand that some of these stones are being broken as they're being liberated from the kimberlite. You know, that's a difficult thing to fix.
And just in terms of overall Brazilian setting, and I mean, I presume there's no ilmenite in your concentrate or your exploration samples, you know, around the Bruno kimberlites.
Brown is very low in ilmenite.
Yeah.
Paulo can touch on that more, but it doesn't have a lot of ilmenite. But certainly you've got, you know, we've seen kimberlites down in Minas Gerais, Coromandel area and everything where they're, you know, rich in ilmenite.
Yeah, but I presume this, you know, these diamondiferous kimberlites, I mean, they're actually quite distinct. I mean, you know, those micrographs, and Barbara can comment, I mean, it looks as though you're looking at Finch kimberlite. And you know, our association here, typically the group 2s, as we call them, or the micaceous kimberlites, have no ilmenite or very minor ilmenite. And that seems to distinguish, you know, what you see in Brazil too. A lot of your rocks have ilmenites, and whereas these don't.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, and credit to you guys. I mean, it's great to see the amount of good scientific, you know, and obviously mine-related work that's been done. So you know, that's fantastic. I mean, someone's already made that point. And it also goes to show, you know, that these small kimberlites can be, you know, good successful mines for small companies and developers like yourselves.
I was convinced of that, you know, when I visited years before we developed Browna, when I visited the Oaks mine and saw that little pipe, which was, I think, 1 hectare, you know, and producing well. And I thought, well, you know, if they can do that on a 1 hectare pipe, the grade and diamond value is right, you know, you can do it on small pipes. So certainly you've got to look at these small pipes. And I think in Brazil here, we've got a lot of small pipes which really weren't tested by, you know, the Rio Tintos and De Beers in the past, because they walked away from small kimberlites. And I think there's a lot of potential here. And some of these kimberlites are older ones, like in Rondônia. You've got the Carolina pipe, which is small and older pipe. and it's diamond bearing. And then you've got these younger, much larger pipes, crater facies, and they have a paucity of diamonds. So, I think we've got to go back to some of these fields and look at some of these smaller targets, because they could be the kimberlites that we're shedding all these alluvial diamonds, in these proximal alluvial fields. So, we've got to go back to those areas and relook at some of these things.
No, I agree fully. And I mean, I think, Brazil is another country that needs a total revisit, as you've done. It gets back to attention to detail. There is no sort of easy silver bullet when it comes to diamond exploration. And when you start looking at kimberlites, they all different, and you cannot afford to do shoddy or you've got to do more detail, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, I should comment here too that the door is open for this now, because one of the problems we had over the last, let's say, 4 years, 5 years longer, and some of my Brazilian friends could comment, with more accuracy on this, is that a lot of it's a combination of a lack of investment, but also a lack of access to ground, because a lot of the licenses for these that were holding these kimberlites were stuck in suspense in the Ministry of Mines. And just towards the end of last year, they've started releasing these areas. So now these areas are coming available for exploration. And so some of these kimberlites have been, sitting in a situation of suspense for, 10, 20 years, are becoming available for exploration. And it's a perfect time to get in there and start relooking at these things. So there is opportunity here now, for certain.
Can I pipe up about rock types?
Yeah.
As I do. So, I mean, my experience in Brazil, which isn't huge, there's a huge variety of rock types. And I think there is I think I probably said this when I was in Brazil, a huge opportunity, although you have your weathering problems, to try and classify them, and petrography could play a huge part in trying to home in on the diamondiferous rock types, which would be kimberlites and lamprites. So going back to Brauna, a lot of the information that you've shown, such as the grand mass phlogopite, grand mass CPX, lack of ilmenite, your geochemistry, your isotopes, I would be very tempted to more push them into what you would call in South Africa, as John just said, group 2s, or then they became orangites. But in the glossary, if you read that, we're suggesting that orangites are just a South African expression of lamprites. So if you call them in that lamprite or group 2 type rock type, I think it's almost to your advantage, because then the olivines tell you where the likely diamonds are, and the incidence of economic kimberlites among those bodies is higher. Am I not right there, John?
Absolutely. No, I couldn't agree more. And I couldn't agree more with you, that we mustn't get hung up on, all these different little side variants. I mean, I think they're all part of the same package. I would think that the metasomatism under these different cratons, they're going to be subtle differences that'll reflect in the rocks. But man, if you look at those rocks, I mean, as you'll know, Barbara, that those macrocrystic textures tell you there should be diamonds there.
Well, especially in the type of rock. So they're almost of more interest because they're not kimberlites and they what I would call lamprites. But orangites are exclusive to South Africa. So this would be the Brazilian equivalent. But what we suggested in the glossary is you do lamprites variety Carp Val Craton for orangites, or lamprites variety Wyoming, or whatever it is. So you'd have lamprites variety, maybe San Francisco Craton or something like that. And then you understand the geology and the diamonds better. So I would then a review across Brazil of any rock types so when you're going to explore, you don't have to look at everything. You can actually home in on a small number. Then if you get the survey or somebody to drill some nice holes, how deep is it before you get fresh rocks? Paulo?
15 meters.
1.5?
Yes.
1.5, well, that's not too bad.
15. No, it's
no. God,
it's outcropping.
All right. Well, if it
almost outcropping.
And across Brazil, how deep do you have to go? That's not, I mean, you don't have to drill deep.
No, but we have, for example, Jaibaras, where we are working now, we have 35 to 40 meters of cover.
Well, that's also not bad.
Yeah.
100 meters.
Yeah.
So if you get one or, ideally more bits of fresh rock from wherever you're working and really classify the rock properly,
Yeah,
it'd be hugely to your advantage and across Brazil.
No, you've got to go back to basics, Barbara, so you like that. I mean, there's nothing like good petrography and hitting rocks and looking at rocks, even if you do have to go and drill for them.
Paulo's good at that. I mean, terrific talk, Paulo. A lot of information, great mind, great science. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It looked like we had someone who raised their hand. I think Sophia had her hand raised.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Ken and Paulo, for this presentation. I've got a quick question on to Paulo. For Paulo, on the faces, as you have described, there are 4 faces. I wonder, does the diamond grade and the quality of diamonds vary between these 4 faces?
Yes. The coherent rock, for some reason, we have more clean diamonds, well formed, like with good shapes. And in the S2, in the volcanoclastic unit, we have more boards and nature broken diamonds as well. So our best quality diamonds is related to the CK unit. More or less, it can vary, because when we go into when we analyze the diluted variation of each faces, we also have something happens with the quality of the diamond as well. So we start to think about the intrusion itself. If the kimberlite is going up, and then it find many barriers, and we have the right conditions for diamond dissolution, digestion, for example, and these brecciated or high diluted units are always related to the border of the pipe. So the border means we have more, the magma had more difficult to break up the crust. So we have a little bit more time of residence of this magma. This is my interpretation, right? This magma in the border, that this maybe can cause dissolution, because we have these structures in the diamonds. We have resorption texture in the diamonds. And also can cause some breakages of the nature of breakage of the diamond during the rising of the magma. This is one of our interpretation. We have something related to the border, but in general, yeah, that's it. We have these 2 different units with 2 different quality of diamonds, and maybe this can be related to the mantle sampling. For sure, is related to the sampling itself. So we have more variables during the way of the kimberlite to the surface as well.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
But in terms of a production, in terms of our production, if we mine only the contact or close to the contact with the granodiorite, we tend to get a higher percentage of bort stones, and then the quality drops. So, as we're mining, we always have to make sure that we're mining ore from both the center of the pipe and from the border, so that we end up with a good production mix for our sales.
Do you have an idea on the timing relationship between the different units? And from what you're saying, it sounds like these are different phases of kimberlite. First of all, is that correct? And do you have a feeling as the Were the fragmental rocks before or after the coherent rocks? Have you sorted that stuff out?
Seems that the volcanoclast unit cross-cut the coherent unit. The coherent is the very first one.
Thank you.
Because we can find fragments of the coherent inside the volcanoclast.
Yeah, that's pretty good evidence.
Yeah, yes.
And you
Got an exploration question, and great talk, Ken and Jose. That's really interesting, and congratulations. It's great to have a primary diamond mine in Brazil. You mentioned that Brown 03 was found is a magnetic anomaly. Are all 23 kimberlites in the cluster magnetic?
Yes.
Yeah, but but it's harder to see the smaller ones. You know, that they're not strongly magnetic because you don't have a lot of ilmenite, don't have a lot of, you know, magnetic minerals in the kimberlites. You know, Brown 03 was the only kimberlite you could see from the airborne survey. And if I remember correctly, José could probably comment on that better. And then the ground geophysics, you can certainly pick up, you know, some of the pipes that are 1 hectare or so, and pick up, you know, the dikes where they blow out. Really, that's how they were discovered. And from indicator mineral sampling, soil sampling. You know, they did a good job. De Beers did a good job of following up on stream sediment anomalies, then doing loam sampling and following up garnet anomalies essentially, and that's what led them to most of these little occurrences.
Only one of the cluster was found on the original, probably fixed wing airborne survey.
That's right. Yeah, that's from my understanding. No, José's shaking his head no. He was there at the time, so. José, you want to comment?
Yes, in fact, you flow there with the 100 meters line spacing aeromag survey, and the first line is on top of the kimberlite, and there is no anomaly on top of that. You need to reduce a lot of the interval of the curves, then the anomaly shows. But in the first flying, no anomalies show. In ground mag appear very well. Ground mag appear very well. But the aeromag survey, almost zero.
And what did you say the line spacing of the original aeromag?
150 meters line space.
Wow. And it didn't see that 2 hectare, didn't see the 2 hectare kimberlite.
No, and you reduce the intervals of the curve by half nanotesla to see the kimberlite.
Wow.
And as you have the magnetic rock outside of the granodiorites, then the anomaly is so noisy, the anomalies are so noisy, but at that point in the first survey, you didn't see the kimberlites.
We have a problem here that masks the magnetics here. We have a good contrast between the kimberlite and the granodiorite, but the problem is the granodiorite cross-cut by amphibolites, basalts. So the basalts here shows exactly the same signal of the kimberlite. So sometimes we are doing the exploration here, we go to the field, and then what we find? Basalts. So the chance, and the basalts here are dikes. So we fight against basalts here as well.
But as you have the contrast in the ground with the granodiorites, the ground geophysics, ground mag work very well, shows very well the kimberlites.
Yes.
Yeah.
When
so there's a lot of potential.
It shows very well the basalts as well.
Yeah. Great. Thank you.
So what was it indicator minerals then that really led to the discovery?
Mainly garnets, né?
Yeah. It was garnets and magan and garnets, mainly garnets were the indicator that they used to follow up on these targets.
Being on with the theory, the subject of exploration, there's your map of the distribution of the kimberlites is tantalizing because they're all in the granodiorite. They're going from what, northwest to southeast, and then they stop at that granodiorite basalt boundary. Is that from lack of discovery because they're difficult, or
Yeah.
placement is only granodiorite because it's easier, or?
Barbara,
there's kimberlites in the greenstone belt. Eh? I mean,
we have
down that,
only one. We have only one small kimberlite in the greenstone belt, but the problem there is the amount of the basalts. It's full of basalts, so the magnetics doesn't work there, so it's hard to find. But the nordestina batholite is huge. We are talking about 35 kilometers wide to 50 kilometers long. So it's a huge structure inside the greenstone belt. So analyzing the magnetotellurics that we have here in the area, there is an study that proves that the nordestina granodiorite can reach depths to 50 to 60 kilometers below surface. So it's a huge batholite. And this maybe, yes, maybe the batholite is controlling this northwest trending. And also this can represent a weak zone of the crust that the kimberlite did find a easier way to ascend than the greenstone, the other part of the greenstone.
There's also
Another problem.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
Another problem, Barbara, in Southeast, there is historical diamond occurrence as well. However, that the area is also, as Ken mentioned, there's no availability of ground to work because Valley was there in New Discovery Brauna, and they covered, they have a gold mine southeast of Brauna. So you got no access to do the proper sampling there.
So do you think there are kimberlites in the basalts, or do you think they might be there, or what?
No, we know that there's some down that was it Hill Pesci. There's
kimberlite. It's a dike, a small dike, cross-cutting the andesite sequence and the basalt as well, andesite and basalt sequence. So if there is some potential there, we need to work on follow-up minerals because the ground mag is a tough job.
It may be
difficult to do the interpretation.
It may be that pipes that are big enough to mine don't form, and maybe it's more competent rock type or something. There may be a geological reason why not just exploration. So it'd be interesting to work out which it is. Not easy.
Not easy. Definitely not.
I think Maya had a couple more questions, if I was correct about that. Feel free to ask them.
Yes, I wanted more people to ask questions before I go again. So again, 2 questions. So can you say if you have fresh mantle xenolith? So that's one. And second is more open-ended question. If you have time and money to do geological research or mineralogical research, what would you do for Brauna? Like what strikes you as the most interesting thing that requires further research?
Leave that to you, Paulo.
Mantle xenolith, we have a population of garnet peridotites, but the mantle xenolith are basically totally serpentinized. I did separate. I have a collection here. I am always looking at our glove box rejects, where we can find some piece of garnets and and other heavy materials. So I did separate some mantle here. When Casey Hetman was here, we did find some eclogites, but small fragments, like 3 small fragments. It's very rare to find some fresh rocks. We need to look at the rejects. At the drill cores, we can find, but it's very difficult to see because they are all serpentinized, altered. And in terms of research, what we can do more here, we can do lots of things. We can study this, if available, the mantles and xenolith. One very interesting point here is the phenitization of the host rock. It's beautiful to see this contact metamorphism. And there is only one paper in the world that deals with the phenitization related to kimberlite intrusion in a granodiorite, in a granitic rock. And yes, it's a open space here to, there's lots of things to do still here.
Thank
I don't
you.
know if I was clear enough, but.
Any idea of the amount of erosion where your kimberlites are?
Sorry, Barbara?
Any idea the amount of erosion, how many meters have you had?
If this kimberlite reached the surface in the past, we are talking about 1 kilometer, 1.5 kilometer, because we are in a very deep eroded situation here, condition zone, root zone with marginal dikes. So and when we are talking about a 642 million years kimberlite.
I understand that. That's why I'm asking. So if you talk about root zone, that's for KPK, the South African classic pipes, right? So it may not be applicable. So if you make these lamperites, that isn't applicable. So from the textures that you were showing, obviously only a few pictures, I mean, they must have been, they look like pyroclastic rocks, so it must have been open to the surface. So I think they are volcanoclastic rocks, which were open to the surface, and you might be deeper in the system, but you're not that deep.
It's an important point, Barbara, and you mustn't. Sorry, you mustn't get hung up on the South African kimberlite model again, because we got caught out in terms of what came along in Canada, and I was going to make exactly the same point. You've got volcanoclastic rocks, so I don't necessarily agree with the 1 or 1.5 kilometers, and maybe someone's got to do some good geomorphology and some apatite work as well, just to look at potential removal of or what has been removed.
Just to add an information that just the next door of Braúna, in the east part of Braúna, there is a huge and deep Cretaceous basin, Tucano Basin, with more than 1,000 meters of sediments in that basin. So in the opening of the continents, that basin was very, very hungry. So a lot of sediments from Braúna, eroded from Braúna to that basin. It's less than 100 kilometers far from Braúna.
Because if you just look at the rocks, the kimberlite, I mean, I would hazard a guess that you can't have more than 1 kilometer erosion. It might be more like 1.5 kilometer. That's just a guess, but I think a pretty reasonable one. So anyway, another interesting aspect.
Okay, thanks, Barbara.
Last call for any questions.
May I ask something about the diamonds themselves? That was a really great overview. I enjoyed it. And I had one question about the characteristics of the diamonds themselves. You've mined them for a few years. Have you noticed anything that stands out as unusual compared to some of the alluvial diamonds that have been recovered to date in other parts of Brazil?
They stand out. They're distinct. Certainly the Braúna diamonds are distinct. you don't see the similar diamonds to Brauna anywhere else in Brazil that I've seen anyway. You know, we get some large gems, good colors, you know, I mean, we're you know, E, F, G type colors. So, you know, it's not bad. And models are not, we don't get a lot of perfect octahedrons. You get a lot of dodecahedrons and makeables, you know, I would say probably get more makeables than solvables. But the quality of the stones is generally very good. And from the 3 carats to, let's say, you know, 3 carats down to a half a carat, the stones are very nice quality. You know, really quite good. Good models, you know, and you know, not a lot of bort in that size fraction.
So at this point, I'm just going to stop the recording and we can transition to our virtual kind of like where we would walk over to the pub. So feel free to grab a drink and we can continue talking, but I'll just stop the recording so things are now off the record.